Welcome to the Kennedy Report. I'm Kennedy Hall. So, Pope Francis is at it again. I wish I didn't have to say that so almost as if it were some sort of joke, but it's true. Pope Francis had an interview with America Magazine, which is the magazine for the Jesuits in America. So you can imagine how theologically liberal that magazine is, even without reading it. But he basically said that it is debated whether or not unborn human beings are actually persons. This is not just conjecture. This is not just, radtradblog.com opinionating. This is an actual thing that Pope Francis himself said, and we're going to show you right here. Before I continue, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the links in the description to see how you can support the channel. Thank you to everyone who has. And here we go. So, this was in an extensive interview with America Magazine. And it's called Pope Francis Denounces Polarization, Talks Women's Ordination, the U.S. Bishops, and More. Now, before we even get into the article, polarization, what an annoying term that is. Jesus Christ was very polarizing. He was very divisive. In fact, Jesus Christ was very rigid in his teachings in that they were unshakable and he wouldn't allow them to be debated. But Pope Francis is on a crusade to make sure that we are no different than the rest of the world, apparently, which is, that's something else. Anyway, so the Pope says, now it covers a lot. You can read the interview if you'd like to engage in some sort of Advent penance or mortification. They go over the idea of women ordination. So if we just do a quick Control F search here, basically the question is put forth, what would you say? Many women feel pain because they cannot be ordained priests. What would you say? This is wrong. No, it's not many women. It's not many women. I'm sure there are some women who want to be priests. There are a lot of people who want to do a lot of things they can't do. I have never met a woman, even in my liberal sort of Novus Ordo days and my traditional Catholic days and the conservative sort of in between, I have never met a woman who said she actually wanted to be a priest. In fact, the only women I've ever seen ever advocating for the female priesthood are women who don't follow the teachings of the church. People in general, not just women, men. The only people I've ever met who advocate for a female priesthood do not follow the 10 Commandments all the way, or don't even attempt to, advocate for a whole host of other doctrinal changes. They don't believe in the real presence of the Eucharist. Any woman I've met, even if she borderlined on the sort of liberal neocon feminist Catholic thing that you find, they still would not say that a woman could be a priest. They understand the function of the priesthood is ordained by God, and it's passed in an actual sense from ordained men to ordained men who act in the persona Christi. They understand this very well. This is not something that's desired by any women. I'm sure there are, in the numerical sense, dozens or hundreds of them in North America who themselves do want to be priests. But I would venture a guess and say not a single one of them is actually Orthodox. And they'll often bring up the example of, I think, Saint Teresa of Lisieux, who in a mystical sense was saying how she longed to be a priest, but not in a sense where she actually wanted to function as a priest of the Catholic Church. There are not women in droves. There are not many of them who want to be priests. It's just not a thing. And those who do don't want to follow the teachings of the church. So what's the point anyway? Anyway, let's continue. Pope Francis gives some weird squishy answer. He says, the church is woman. The church is a spouse. I don't really know if you could say the church is woman, although there is definitely the bride of Christ for sure. We have not developed a theology of women that reflects this. How is this even true? With all due respect to the Holy Father, there is a massive amount of literature about the feminine receptivity of the body of Christ as the spouse of Christ. I mean, this is totally understood. Read the writings of Bonaventure, for example. especially in the Eastern church fathers. I mean, you find stuff like this all the time. Eastern theologians, I should say, not just church fathers. You find stuff like this all the time. This isn't true that there's no theology about this. There is plenty of theology about this. Anyway, continuing. He goes on to say how many women have work in the Vatican now, blah, blah, blah. He even says something very striking. He says, women have a nose, an ecclesial sense to see if this man or is not suitable for the priesthood. How could you even, I mean this, how can we even make that statement? No one has a nose in like some sort of sixth sense who can be or not be a priest. Priests or really holy people know what a good priest should be, and the person could demonstrate the characteristics that are consistent with the priesthood. They could know whether or not they were chaste. They could know whether or not they were intelligent. They could know whether or not they were courageous, all these sorts of things, discipline. But I think this idea even stems from this strange kind of modern error of what a vocation is. There's this idea that people discover the vocation in themselves like it's some unique mark on their soul that was put there by God and they just have to find it. That's not what a vocation is. A vocation it means to answer the call. The vocation is when you answer the call of the bishop to go forward for ordination. And men develop in the seminary, if it's good seminary, they develop into a priest after a long period of training. The gift of celibacy, for example, it's not some crazy mystical thing. It's a matter, grace perfects nature. I'm not going to say it's only a natural thing. But there's a reason why, for example, in a good traditional seminary, they won't accept a man to become a priest unless he can demonstrate truthfully that it's been 3 years since some sort of unchastity. And that's what constitutes demonstrating that you do have the gift, you do have the ability, by cooperating with God's grace, to remain chaste. Because if you can do so outside of the seminary, for example, just being a person in the world who's single, in proper seminarial context with rule of life and the office and holiness and so forth, it's much more reasonable that gift can be cultivated. But it's not some sort of like charismatic grace that comes down from heaven and someone is just, infused with the gift of celibacy. That's not the case at all. It's something that's cultivated. I'm sure some people are more predisposed to it, different temperaments. Sure, people are sanguine and choleric and all those kinds of things. Some people are more predisposed to addictive behavior. I get that. So you rule those things out. But this idea that women in general have this nose to know who's a priest, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense for anybody as a vocation is developed. Anyway, continuing. He goes on, and this is the money part. Okay. Well, actually right here, he's called there are some who even think you may be a socialist or they even call you a Marxist. Yeah, I wonder why. But here is the part about the unborn. Okay. So, this is from Gloria Purvis, disgraced EWTN fame. She says, Holy Father, abortion is a heavily politicized issue in the United States. We know it is wrong, and the United States Supreme Court recently ruled that there is no constitutional right to abortion. However, it still seems to plague the church in the sense that it separates us. Should the bishops prioritize abortion in relation to other social justice issues? Okay, this question is complete and insane nonsense. Think about this. She asks, the issue of abortion seems to plague the church in the sense that it separates us. No, it does not separate the church, because if someone's pro-choice, they're not Catholic. If you're pro-abortion, you're not Catholic, so you're not in the church. I mean, in an ontological sense, you're baptized, sure, but Nancy Pelosi is not Catholic. Joe Biden's not Catholic. Again, there's a distinction between their indelible mark of baptism and the fact that they do profess the Apostles' Creed when they do attend Mass. but they separate themselves from being in any sort of union with Christ by advocating for atrocities against the human race. They deny dogma. In doing so, they separate themselves from the church. There is no division within the church on this issue, because if you fall down on the wrong side of it, you're no longer Catholic. This question itself is a complete bungling of a question to begin with. And also, let's just say I'm wrong, and somehow, let's just say I'm wrong here, and Nancy Pelosi still is hunky-dory as a Catholic. Who cares if it separates us? I don't want to not be separated from somebody who denies Catholicism. Do you? I don't care if the pro-death, anti-life, supposedly Catholic crowd wants to be united with me. It's not about me, I should say. I want to be united to Christ through the church, attend the sacraments, believe the faith, die in a state of grace. Anybody who represents the antithesis of that, I want to have a clear separation from, in the sense of my personal life, in so far as I'm talking about ecclesially being in the church. Now, obviously, there's always a difference of, as a Christian, we're called to, like Christ, he visits the sinners of no one's saying have some sort of idea that we don't have anything to do with the unclean or whatever. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying she's saying that it's a problem, that there's a separation issue because of the pro-death stance in the church. That's not a problem. That's a good thing. This is like saying, the 10 commandments, they're just so polarizing. That commandment, thou shalt not kill, that adultery commandment. These are hardcore, how can, it's a plague. These 10 commandments, they're a plague on the church. That's what she's saying. She's saying that the issue of life in the womb is a plague. And that's her words. Let's look at them again. It seems to plague. Like the fact that there's no constitutional right to abortion seems to plague the church in the sense that it separates us. No, a government following the 10 commandments, at least better than they used to, is not a plague on the church. People not wanting to follow the 10 commandments, people wanting to abrogate the laws of God, that is the plague on the church. Again, Christ is uncompromising with his morality, but he is obviously empathetic in his ministerial capacity. We are all called to be like that. We follow the 10 commandments. We endeavor to live in a state of grace. But of course, we never say, you can't come into my house because you don't believe everything I do. That's ridiculous. You could make decisions about who is not allowed in your house for reasons of scandal. I get that. Every parent makes decisions for that. Even the left understands that because they wouldn't want someone like me talking to them. But my point is, this question in and of itself, this is a question that frames the answer as if Pope Francis answers this question, which he does, but if he answers this question affirming the actual premise at all, he is de facto affirming the question and saying that, yes, it is a plague that we're separated by this. Let's look at his answer here, because this is where the rubber meets the road. She says, should the bishops prioritize abortion in relation to other social justice issues? On abortion, this is Pope Francis speaking. On abortion, I can tell you these things, which I have said before. In any book of embryology, it is said that shortly before 1 month after conception, the organs and the DNA are already delineated in the tiny fetus before the mother even becomes aware. This is true, and thank you for saying this, Pope Francis. Therefore, there is a living human being. Now, why couldn't Pope Francis just have stopped there? Can he just give us that for once? Why couldn't he just stop there? No, he has to continue. And he goes on and he says, I do not say a person because that is debated, but a living human being. No, it's not debated. It's not debated. In fact, I'll bring it up in a second, but it's not debated. It's actually, even in the New Catechism, I'm going to bring up a tweet from my friend Matt Gaspers. It is not debated that it is a person in the womb, because the human being is created with a soul. It's really simple. And you know what's going to happen now? Look at this. I do not say person because this is debated. He goes on to say, and I raise two questions. Is it right to get rid of the human being to resolve a problem? Okay, this is very strange rhetoric by the Pope. Anyway. Second question, is it right to hire a hitman to resolve a problem? These are all good arguments. I get this. The problem arises when this reality of killing a human being is transformed into a political question, or when a pastor of the church uses political categories. No, it is not a problem when a pastor of the church uses political categories, because there is no separation between politics and ethics. In fact, politics is ethics applied to society. That's what politics are. If you decide, even the most mundane things, if you decide as a village or a town whether or not to use the money to fix the roads or to fix the library or something, you're actually making an ethical decision. What is just? What is the most need? What do the people of the town or the village need the most? What is the fair and just way, which is an ethical question, to use the funds? It's not intrinsically good or bad to fix either of them. But the point is that you cannot do politics without bringing up ethical and religious principles. And you can't have ethics as a Christian without believing in God. There is no separation of religion and state. This is the categorical error of the Second Vatican Council's paradigm that's followed through. And Pope Francis is the flowering of that. This idea that he believes it's an issue that bishops and prelates would use categories that are political, in his opinion, to do things like talk about pro-life issues, pro-death issues. It's impossible to avoid that. I mean, follow this out. We believe, for example, that human trafficking is wrong. And actually, Pope Francis has been pretty strong on that. Imagine someone said, well, we can't get into political discussions about human trafficking. That's a problem if prelates do that. And this is the same Pope all the time who is going on about migration issues, open borders, climate change. Come on, this is nonsense. Okay, let's see last thing he has here. He says, each time a problem loses the pastoral dimension, okay, that problem becomes a political problem and becomes more political than pastoral. This makes no sense. I mean, let no one hijack this truth, which is universal. It does not belong to one party or another. It is universal. When I see a problem like this one, which is a crime, become strongly, intensely political, there is a failure of pastoral care in approaching this problem. Whether in this question of abortion or in other problems, one cannot lose sight of the pastoral dimension. A bishop is a pastor, a diocese is the holy people of God with their pastor, blah, 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 modernist nonsense, modernist. We cannot deal with abortion as if it is only a civil matter. Yeah, I agree. Of course we can't deal with it as if it's only a civil matter. It's an ethical matter. Yeah, it's not only a civil matter. Human trafficking is not only a civil matter, but you pass laws to stop it if you can. Beating your wife is not only a civil matter, but you make it illegal because it's wrong. Anyway, let's just look up real quick here what my friend Matt Gaspers, he sent me a tweet. He said, Matt Gaspers has a really good Twitter actually for this stuff, but I'll bring it up here real quick. Here he says, there you go. Catechism of the Catholic Church. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person. Oh, man. Pope Francis denied the catechism. This is the new catechism. This is not even the Roman catechism. This is the catechism which is like 95% good, 5% modernism, or whatever the delineation would be. This isn't even the strong catechism. This is just the basic Novus Ordo catechism. Let's look at it again. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person. So Pope Francis denies the Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you're just joining us now, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the links in the description, and click the thumbs up button, the notification bell, you know the drill. So If you're just joining us, Pope Francis has denied, or seemingly denied, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. He said he doesn't say that the unborn human being in the womb is a person because that's debated. But according to the Catechism, which he has authority over and must follow he must follow the doctrines of the Church. The Pope has to be a Catholic. He says that he does not say a person because this is debated. This is about unborn children. Thank you, Matt Gaspers. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person. That's what the Catechism says. So Pope Francis denies the Catechism. Pope Francis seemingly denies the personhood of the unborn. This is what's going to happen now. Okay. You see, in the civil sphere, pro-lifers who try to argue for the rights of the unborn do so by arguing that they're not just human beings, but persons. So they're afforded the same protections because persons have rights under the law, and human and person shouldn't be distinct from each other in a legal sense. But now what's going to happen is if you're trying to argue this, they're going to use your Catholicism against you and say, according to your Pope, you're not even telling the truth, so you can't argue on religious grounds. Let's just say it's for, exemptions to a vaccination, or you're trying to argue that you can't have remote material cooperation with some sort of funding of abortion or something like that. Pick the legal issue that come out all the time. They're going to point to this and they're going to say, your Pope says you're wrong. This is debated. You can hold that opinion if you want, but you can't say that's a doctrine. And then you're going to say, well, hold on a second. What about the Catechism of the Catholic Church? Even this, partly modernist one, which you should accept because, it's got enough liberalism just for you. And they'll say, sorry, your Pope is the head of your church, and your Pope says it's debated. So good luck, Chuck. It's going to be just like with vaccine exemptions. Anyway, Matt Gaspers had another tweet, which actually plays on what I was saying earlier. This idea that polarization is not Catholic. Gaspers tweeted. Gaspers is a beauty, by the way. You guys should all go check out his stuff. He said, O Lord Jesus Christ, he that is not with me is against me, and he that gathereth not with me scattereth. And Sister Lucia Fatima said, either we are for God or we are for the devil. There is no other possibility. Polarization is Catholic. Well said, Matt Gaspers. I should have Matt on the show. It was a pleasure to meet with him down at the Catholic Identity Conference. We had electronically communicated for years when I was with the Fatima Center and just sort of developed this Catholic journalist friendship. And he's such a good guy. Seems like a really earnest fella. Anyway, it'd be great to... he's tall. I didn't know how tall he was. And then I met him in real life. I was like, whoa, Matt, you're tall. I'm just under 6 feet tall. I'm not tall, but I'm not short. Matt was tall. So good job on that, Matt. In any case, Pope Francis has denied the Catechism publicly. Again, what a shocker. And he has now cast doubt in the eyes of the world on whether or not the unborn human being is a person, and only persons deserve rights. So, another day at the office for the Holy Father. All right, like this video, subscribe to this channel, click the links in the description, see how you can help us continue to grow. Thank you for all your support. I hope you're enjoying the start to your Advent. Maybe this should be motivation to do more penance and mortification. Pray for the Holy Father. Pray that he converts to actually believe Catholicism. That would be a good start. This has been the Kennedy Report. Until next time, God bless.